Welcome along. Thank you very much for being here.
Patrick. It's a great honour to be here, as ever.
Good stuff. Well, you've just come from the Remembrance Sunday service.
Yes.
And it's Armistice Day when this goes out. OK, so Donald Trump has just been elected as the President of the United States of America. Does that make the world a safer place?
Well, I think that we'll have to wait and see, but I think there are reasons for optimism, Patrick. And I think one of the reasons that Donald Trump was re-elected, in this sensational way this last week, was because actually a lot of people looked back at that period when he was in the White House, 2016 to 2020, and they think, wasn't things stabler then? We seemed to have fewer wars. The economy was doing basically pretty well. And I think that really helps him because in big US elections, it's always the economy's crucial. But they thought that it was stable. And under Trump, politically, geostrategically. And I think they're right. And I look back at my time as Foreign Secretary and then as Prime Minister, and I remember, Donald Trump doing some things that were really pretty difficult, but were tough.
Like what?
Well, give you one obvious example. When Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons against his own people in 2013, if you remember, the government of the US at that time under Barack Obama, with Joe Biden as his vice president, had threatened to do the terrors of the earth in reprisals. They did nothing. We did nothing in the UK either. And that was a great pity because it emboldened Assad and it made the West look weak. Trump, when he came in I remember in 2018, when I was Foreign Secretary, 2017, 2018, he actually bombed the hell out of some of Bashar al-Assad's bases when he used chemical weapons again. Yeah. And Assad never did it again.
This is what I want to talk about, because the big elephant in the room, as far as I'm concerned, between you and Trump, is Ukraine. OK, so Trump said, I could end Ukraine and Russia war on day one. How does he do that? Do you want him to do that? And do you understand how in this country at the moment we've got people having their winter fuel allowance cut to save 1.8 billion quid, but we are committing to £3 billion a year, every year, for as long as it takes to Ukraine, and people don't necessarily like that? Let
me give the financial argument for why that's a good investment of public funds, and why protecting democracy in Ukraine is actually a sensible investment. And the answer is very simple. If Ukraine goes down, then we face an even bigger threat on our borders, the borders of the European continent, wherever the democracies butt up against Russia. So it'll be in the Baltic states, it'll be in Georgia. You'll see the impact of a Ukrainian defeat in the Pacific Theatre. You'll see it in the South China Sea.
Well, what is a defeat? Is it giving any territory?
So, Patrick, what I'm saying is, for people watching this thinking, why are we supporting the Ukrainians? It's because otherwise our collective security will be really degraded by a resurgent Russia threatening all sorts of parts of Europe, and we will then have to pay to send British
But we're not really talking about giving them Ukraine, are we? I think
our allies and friends in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, we already have some, but we'll have to send a lot more.
The thinking is that maybe if they do some kind of land deal, right, so there would still be a rather large Ukrainian buffer there. So it's not as though we'd be breathing right down the neck, is it?
Let's talk about what the future could hold then, and how
Trump can
stop. So let me get back to what I was saying a bit earlier about the reasons for being optimistic about Trump on Ukraine, okay? And, it's not a slam dunk, okay? Donald Trump has lots of different voices in his ears. And he's got people on there's a frond of the Republican Party, quite a lot of them actually, who take the wrong line on Ukraine. And who are frankly a bit entranced by Vladimir Putin. And they have a kind of weird sort of fanboy thing about Putin, taking his shirt off, and it's creepy, it's bonkers, it's wrong. But there's some, you know what I'm talking about. There's a group of the Republicans that are on the wrong track on Ukraine. and on Russia. And he's listening to some of those people. You know who they are. Perhaps they've appeared on this show. I don't know. But that's being, and like people like Viktor Orban in Hungary. So he's hearing all that. On the other hand, this is the same Trump who made a huge difference to the fortunes of Ukraine when he authorized the supply of the Javelin shoulder-launched anti-tank weapons. And if Trump hadn't done that, then the battle for Kiev might have been very, very different.
Can I just localise this a little bit to us in terms of what a Trump presidency looks like? So apparently today reports are that he's going to return the bust of Churchill to the White House. Churchill's bust is going to be in the White House. News. Good news.
That's good news.
Trump is presumably very good for Britain in that sense. He actually likes us. Were you quite surprised by the reaction to Trump's victory by some people in the left-wing media, like Rory Stewart and Emily Maitlis?
I saw your brilliant commentary on this, and I approved. But look, I think they got it. I think they simply misunderstood what was happening in America, and what they got wrong was it's the economy, right? And like I said right at the beginning, a lot of people looked back to the time of Donald Trump and remembered that things were not only stable but also quite prosperous. And he had a clear and credible economic message about growth, about tax cuts, about deregulation.
Well, you said you were in the studio with Emily Maitlis and she started having some kind of breakdown.
She did. Then everybody, they all start, it's like elderly beldames who see a mouse running up their petticoats and they shriek and they jump on the chairs and they call for the smelling salts and the sal volatile and all this sort of stuff. And it's totally bonkers. I mean, they've got some sort of deep cultural aesthetic aversion to Donald Trump.
With Keir Starmer, who has previously said that we shouldn't have welcomed Trump. In fact, Keir Starmer used Trump's endorsement of you as the prime example of why you shouldn't be elected.
Did he?
Angela Rayner called him a buffoon. We all know that David Lammy's called him a neo-Nazi sympathising woman hater, whatever else. Yvette Cooper's said much the similar as Starmer. Sadiq Khan's alluded to the idea that he might be an Islamophobe. How on earth can this Labour government work with Trump?
Well, look, I mean, I'm going to give a sort of a slightly politician's answer to this one because but it happens also to be true,
right?
Which is that sometimes there are some things that bring governments and countries together that transcend the individual politicians and the wrangles and the name calling. And yeah, I think that it would be sensible if the Labour government rode back a bit from some of the things they've said.
Surely they've got to get rid of that.
Well, no. Well, whatever. That's a matter for them.
Well, one of the other key things of Trump's victory was to do with illegal immigration, and he has promised to remove en masse illegal immigrants and criminal migrants as well. Shouldn't we do the same?
I agree, and I looked at that and I think we should, and we'll see how he gets on, because be in no doubt, Pat, the lawyers will be all over it, as they were all over our various projects. And it's like I said in April 2022 when I launched the Rwanda scheme. You've got to get the legal ducks in a row. And I said to the country that when we launched that, it would only work if we could get the lawyers to back down, because we live we live under the rule of law, and we try to protect human rights. But sometimes it can be done. That protection of rights is done in such a way as to be, I think, unreasonable and against the clear manifesto commitments that the government has.
Is that because the legal profession is ideologically biased, do you think?
No, I think that we've got ourselves into a situation where it is very difficult to deport even people who patently should be deported. And I'm sure you cover loads of cases. And we need to fix that. And I think that our party, my party, the Conservative Party, did have a perfectly good agenda. For the Rwanda plan is a good one, and I think that Rob Jenrick was making a very interesting point when he said that it might be time to review the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, because I think sometimes it is being applied in a way that is anti-democratic and that is stopping the removal of people who plainly need to be removed. So anyway, I look at some of the things that Trump is now saying about that issue, and I can understand why he's saying it. And I think that in a democracy, we need to have a way of doing it, because you'll have dozens of examples in your head, but there are some people who stay on who plainly should be removed.
Here then, surely Keir Starmer doesn't appear to want to do that. I mean, he's made a lifetime.
Well, no, but he is.
You don't think he wants to? Fundamentally, you don't think he sees a problem with foreign criminals being in Britain, basically?
I think I'm sure he does, but he's not doing enough to stop it. And the only way to stop it is to get really serious on this.
Well,
and to cut I was very impressed by an article by the former Supreme Court Judge Lord Sumption, who I thought got it about right. I think this thing has had its time. And
so you'd get out of the ECHR?
I think the case is pretty overwhelming now.
You must have voted for Robert Jenrick to be leader of the Tory party.
I'm not going to discuss. As you know, I stayed out of it absolutely ruthlessly because I didn't want to. I really didn't want it to. I didn't want to. No.
Did you vote for the leader?
As the Liberal Democrats always say, I'm not telling you what I voted for.
They do often say it in a voice very similar to that as well. Let's drag us back down to earth. So you are here now on Remembrance Sunday. This is going out on Armistice Day. One thing I find absolutely fascinating, right, is that pupils in schools now probably don't know about D-Day. A lot of them. Is this a problem with our education system? Has it gone a bit woke? Why is it so important that children in our schools learn about British values, British history?
I think people need to remember the immense sacrifice that older generations made for our freedom. And I think that it's incredibly relevant today because what they did, those now very elderly men and women that you see who are veterans of the Second World War, was they helped to liberate an entire continent that was under the threat of, not under the threat, had been conquered and colonized by fascism, by a racist, authoritarian, anti-democratic creed, Nazism. And what they did was to lay down their lives to liberate that continent. And what I see today is in Ukraine, most obviously, I see exactly the same struggle. And when I listen to Putin talking about Russian language speakers in parts of Ukraine, the need to take over that country, I hear the voice of Hitler. I hear it's exactly the same argument. And be in no doubt that if he were to succeed in Ukraine, that country would be turned into a vassal state of Russia. It would cease to have any democratic independence. And around the world, it would look like the West had been defeated. It was the extinction of democracy. By the way, I see the same struggle in, and a lot of viewers may think I'm wrong about this, but I've got to tell you, I see the same struggle in the conflict between Hamas.
What do you think people like Winston Churchill would say about pro-Palestine demonstrations on Remembrance Weekend and Armistice Day?
Winston Churchill was a very strong supporter of Israel and of the Jewish people. And I think that he would have been appalled by some of the obvious racism and anti-Semitism that we're now seeing. I think he would have been absolutely horrified.
I mean, just on that, we've seen a pogrom in Amsterdam in the last couple of days, haven't we? I know that there are massive fears of similar-ish things happening here. This does link in with global events, right? Do you worry about the idea that we have a strong cohort of people in this country who don't like us very much?
I really worry that anti-Semitism is sprouting up again around the world. And you've got to think, anti-Semitism has been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years, really. And it's kind of like a virus under the floorboards, or like a spore of some disease that suddenly gets potentiated. It suddenly comes alive again because of certain events in European history, and it's alive now. And you see it on the streets of London. You see it in Australia. You see it in America. You see it other parts of Europe. And Holland, tragically, is no exception. And I thought the Dutch King spoke very well about the subject, and I think he was right, because the tragedy is that, that is it's a huge blot on all of European history. I mean, our own country historically has not been immune. I mean, there have been pogroms against Jewish people in I'm sad to say, in the Middle Ages in England as well.
Under your leadership, mass migration, net migration to the UK reached a record high of 764,000 in 2022. We also had an easing of visa rights, cutting the salary and the skills threshold, etc. Do you at all feel responsible for some of the cultural changes that we're seeing in Britain?
Look, I think it's very important to, if you're talking about anti-Semitism, Patrick, I think it's very, very important to recognise that, tragically, all communities are susceptible to this virus and this plague. All communities. On immigration and numbers, look, the most important thing is that we took back control. And it is absolutely correct to say that there was a big spike in 2022, but that was because numbers went off a cliff in 2021 because of COVID. And so nobody was crossing there were very few immigrant arrivals at all. And the problem with 2022, if you recall, was the number one challenge our country faced was the cost of living crisis, or the inflation, basically. And that was at least partly, very largely caused by labour market problems. If you remember, the people were worried we weren't going to get the shelves stacked for Christmas. We weren't going to have the turkey, we weren't going to have the Brussels sprouts. It was going to be a nightmare. We couldn't get the lorry drivers to take the fuel to the petrol stations. Everybody was freaking out about the labour market. And so what happened in that year was that the Migration Advisory Committee said, when they looked at things like social care, where we just simply didn't have enough pairs of hands to do the job. We looked at some of the retail, hospitality, some of the sectors I've just mentioned. And I had every department in Whitehall was freaking out because they were saying the economy was just going to seize up. So the Migration Advisory Committee said we need to have some more people in. Now, I think, and you might think, in retrospect, looking at the numbers that we eventually got, it was...
and we are worse off per capita. So the economic argument is questionable at best.
Well, I think that inflation impoverishes everybody. It really does. Inflation is an absolute scourge. And you're too young to remember inflation. You are. You don't remember what was it like under Labour in the 1970s.
I know what my energy bills are like now.
Yeah, but you don't remember spiralling double-digit inflation and wage price inflation just chasing each other up. And that's a vice to which I'm afraid our country has been prone in the past. And we had to sort out those labour market problems. Now you can say that the numbers were too high, and I'd accept that. But never forget, it was we who controlled it, because we took back control with Brexit. And in future years, we can say no. We can say we've got enough. We don't need any more.
Part of it because of Brexit.
So that would be my rejoinder.
Look, okay,
that's, by the way, what I would have said during the election campaign, where we got hammered on immigration, and we didn't need to be.
No. Do you think that some people have a right to be angry about migrant hotels in their local area?
I think they have the right to be angry about the cost and the public money that's being spent on it all. I think it's nuts. And
safety.
And I think that the sooner we fix it, the better. And so one of the reasons I think the Rwanda policy was right was because you have to show people that they're not going to be accommodated endlessly at the taxpayer's expense in hotels or migrant hospitals, that they're going to be sent back straight away sent to Rwanda for processing. And I really believe that would have been a huge deterrent to illegal migration. It would have been a huge deterrent. And but when we had the policy, or when the policy was still being worked up, you could see it working. You could see people being deterred. But what I find so incredible about what Labour has done is they've scrapped the Rwanda policy at vast expense, but they're now saying that they want to do a similar deal with Albania.
Which the Italians have had a bit of problems with as well.
They have. But I mean, but internationally, what's the difference, Patrick, between Rwanda and Albania?
Well, you could argue. It's not going to start with a joke, to be fair. But you could argue. Rwanda's African.
Correct.
Right,
Go on, keep going.
Which implies to me that maybe they have a racism problem.
Well, I'm glad you said it, not me. You're, altogether a braver broadcaster. But I think that's, look at it. What the hell? It's just ridiculous. I just at Remembrance Sunday happened to be talking to the High Commissioner from Rwanda. And I said what a shame it was.
Just now?
Just literally just half an hour ago. And I said, an hour ago, what a shame it was that we weren't pursuing the partnership. And he agreed, but I think we should.
So would they still be up for it, do you think?
Of course they would. Of course they would. And by the way, other European countries that are more sensible are now pursuing similar deals. So, the point about immigration, to get back to the point about immigration, I'm a mongrel made up of all sorts of immigrants. But the point about immigration is that people will wear it, they'll understand it, they'll accept it if they feel it's controlled. And the problem with the illegals, particularly people, the people who come so visibly across the channel in the dinghies, coracles and so on, is that they undermine the people who are coming here legally. And they seem to be getting an unfair advantage. They seem to be...
Well, it seems to be treated better than some British citizens, to be honest with you.
And all that impression causes understandable resentment. And so whether it's the United States or this country, it's something that really, really, for the sake of democracy, needs to be fixed. And I'll tell you something else, Patrick.
Okay.
Sorry if I'm just going on, but...
It's all right.
It's one of the reasons Trump won. Right?
Yeah.
You cannot just tell people who care or who worry about this issue that they're garbage or that they're espousing fascist views. And the liberal left made a huge mistake when they did that, because people, they're not. They're just trying to uphold...
Did Starmer do that?
They're just trying to uphold the law.
Did Starmer do that? He's accused of being two-tier care, wasn't he?
Well, look, I mean, I think... In what sense? You mean, did he abuse?
There is the impression that, well, there's not the impression, a lot of people were locked up for a very long time for some non-violent offences, right? So social media posts. There was also this idea that he came out and issued what many regard as quite sweeping statements about how these riots were clearly racist, or the protests were clearly racist. Now, behind the initial furore were millions of people with just genuine concerns.
I think that a lot of people around the world looked at some of the... Look, we weren't in the court when some of these people were tried. So we have to defer to the judiciary, and maybe they heard things that we didn't, right?
Okay.
Preface what was... But when you're locking someone up for quite a long time, some mother, grandmother who's never had a criminal record before, for something she said in the spur of the moment on Twitter, and you're simultaneously letting people out of prison who are really quite serious offenders, there are people around the world who look up to Britain as a great beacon of free speech, right? And they do worry about that because it does seem to be disproportionate.
Okay.
And I think that we need to be careful about that because, in Russia, believe me, they'll take a case like that. The Kremlin will take a case like that and they'll say, look, you say that we don't have free speech in Russia, which they don't, by the way. They shoot journalists, and it's infinitely worse. Infinitely worse. Okay, infinitely worse. But they will use these examples as a sign that, tu quoque, free speech is not allowed in Britain.
Do you think there's a chance? Do you think it's just Putin used Starmer's response to the riots?
I don't know. I don't know. But I can certainly say that around the world, that is the sort of thing that the Kremlin trolls will be doing.
Right. Oh, but I have enough time to ask you about net zero, one of your pet loves.
Yes, come on.
Right, okay. A recent report from the National Energy System Operator suggests that net zero will require at least 40 billion quid a year. That's going to be passed on to the consumer in bills. July 2021, the OBR estimated a net cost to be £321 billion, rising to 1.4 trillion by 2050. We've got some of the highest energy bills in the world.
I know.
What's the difference between you and Ed Miliband? Are you just Ed Miliband in a wig?
No. Because far from anything else, Labour, when they were in power for 13 years, did nothing about nuclear power, which is what this country needs. And I green-lighted loads of nuclear power stations. And I'm different in this sense, and I don't have the sort of completely hysterical objection to using hydrocarbons, which this country possesses, during the transition. And I do, as it happens, think it's mad to be importing coal from Australia or wherever, literally, when we have it in the UK, and we could use it sparingly.
Well, I went to a place in Stanley. I did an entire podcast.
But all that said, so I believe that during the transition period, we should definitely, we should not be bullying people. We should not be hitting people with unnecessary bills. I would go further. I'm sort of with Elon Musk in the sense that I think that renewables can offer a very bright future. And I think the sun, every minute provides enough energy to power the world for a year. If we're working out increasingly ingenious ways of harnessing that. The UK has been at the forefront of that. We should be driving that forward. So I'm a kind of techno-capitalist optimist about the way forward.
Okay.
But what I don't want to do, and I think actually putting more windmills in the sea or using going for nuclear fusion or whatever, these are very, very good things to do.
Okay.
And you should be so. And I think it will drive loads of jobs in this country.
Tim Shipman, the journalist, has got a book out.
Yes.
And in that book, he says that after you resigned, the Queen said, "Thank goodness that idiot won't be organising my funeral."
Yes. I think it's highly unlikely that she said that because, of course, no Prime Minister organises the monarch's funeral. It's done by DCMS. I think it's possible that there's a malicious tittle-tattle.
The final thing, quick fire round, right?
Yeah.
Final round, and then we'll get you out of here. Quick fire round. The farmers' protest, supposedly taking place on November the 19th. Will you go? Do you support them?
When is it?
Supposedly November the 19th.
Well, look, it's a really, really dumb thing to do. We are struggling. I mean,
not the protest. I'm assuming the inheritance.
No, the inheritance tax thing. It is. We're struggling to keep people on the land to make sure that farmers are incentivised to hand over their business to their descendants. I mean, my own family was in the same position. And I can tell you, it's an absolute nightmare.
So you support the idea
of a
process?
Look, I haven't been invited to this process. I didn't know. You're the first to mention it to me.
But you would go if you were
I'm
asked.
obviously not in favour of breaking the law. If this protest involves squirting slurry at, Labour politicians, and I obviously won't support it. But if I'm around. And it seems to me to be a.
If you happen to see a tractor,
If I happen to see a tractor, I'm not excluding the possibility that I would strongly sympathise with the driver of that tractor.
All right.
Because I think it's mad. It's absolutely mad. I don't know why they've done it.
What's the best thing about Carrie?
About my wife?
Yeah.
Well, darling, if you're watching, there's no limit to your beauty and your talents. I can't tell you. There's many things.
Good answer. A good answer. Favourite TV show?
Well, I don't watch much TV. I should do.
I mean, there's an easy answer to this.
Well, GB News.
Yeah.
The Patrick Christys show. I think, obviously it's got to be the Patrick Christys show. Though, have you watched something called Love Triangle?
No.
No.
Do I want to?
No, Carrie been watching. I can't follow it at all. Anyway,
Is it fiction? Is it a reality thing?
It seems to be. I think they're real people. Yes.
Great. No, that's the kind of stuff that does my head in.
No, it doesn't. I can't follow it at all.
No.
But the Patrick Christys show, everybody. That's the one to watch.
Favourite holiday destination?
Oh boy. Honestly,
yeah.
I mean, I love all parts of this wonderful country of ours, and we unhesitatingly go any venue here. But I love Greece. I do love Greece.
Strong stuff. I'm half Cypriot, so I'll go for that. Favourite alcoholic drink?
Very easy, red wine.
Just any?
No, I mean, virtually any, yeah. I'm not. I look, this is why are you asking me these very, very difficult and personal questions? And, I think I've been around a long time now, and I must have drunk a hell of a lot of red wine. But should I tell you something? You don't judge them by the bottle. You can never tell.
Okay.
You can drink some fantastic wine that is amazingly cheap. That's my view.
You'll be pleased to know this is the last question I'll ask you.
Go on, right.
What's the best celebrity you've ever met?
Her Majesty the Queen. Her late Majesty the Queen.
Oh, right, okay, another one.
No, I'm sorry. That is easily.
Okay, to be fair, that is a good answer. That is a good answer. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.